As the sun started to set in the late afternoon, the metropolis of Los Angeles sparkled, its skyline appearing as a jagged silhouette against the golden sky. This was just another minute for Bill Spencer, one of the most influential men in the city, to think about what he should do next. The day was winding down for those who were at the top of the fashion industry. But for him, it was just another moment. His entire life had been a series of planned decisions, the majority of which had been merciless, all of which had been made with the intention of preserving his empire and his authority over the people he loved. Today, however, Bill was on the verge of making a decision that was less about power and more about the heart. This decision would not only have an impact on him, but it would also have an impact on Katie Logan, the woman who had been in and out of his life for years, as well as their son Will. Bill was observing the city below from his rooftop office at Spencer Publications, where he was standing at the window overlooking the city. Although the hum of the city was barely audible to him, his thoughts were far apart from the noise. Today was the day that he and Katie had made the decision to break the news, which will undoubtedly cause ripples to be sent through their life, as well as the lives of those who are in their immediate vicinity. The door to his office opened from behind him, and Katie Logan entered the interior of the building. Her presence was friendly and reassuring, but was also tinged with the same sense of unease that Bill experienced. This was the latest of many things that they had been through together, including love, heartbreak, and reconciliation. When they were ready to do something, the weight of what they were going to do hung between them like an unseen thread, linking them together in a shared sense of alarm. Katie's voice broke the silence. She whispered, "Bill," and then she continued, "Are you ready?" Bill turned his back on her and faced her, his countenance non-existent. On the other hand, hidden beneath those icy blue eyes was a fragility that very few people ever witnessed. When he spoke, his voice was solid, but there was an undercurrent of uncertainty in it. "As ready as I'll ever be," he said. Katie moved closer, watching him with her eyes as she did so. "We have discussed this before, and we have given it a lot of thought. All of us should do it because it is the correct thing to do." He responded, "I know," with a low tone in his voice, "but that doesn't make it any easier." Katie nodded, indicating that she understood his reluctance. This was a moment that they had both dreaded, yet there was no way to take it away from them. For the truth to be revealed, it was necessary for them to be the ones to do it. It was not an easy one to make the decision to reveal the information. Over the course of several weeks, Bill and Katie had tried to come to terms with the ramifications, the potential consequences, and the responses they would encounter. Nevertheless, in the end, they had both come to the conclusion that the only way forward was to be honest. They had always had a complicated relationship, one that was a ballet between love and conflict, trust and betrayal despite their best efforts. They had discovered that they were on opposing sides of conflicts on multiple occasions. Nevertheless, they had also discovered that they could find their way back to each other on multiple occasions. And then there was Will, their kid, the one thing that remained the same in their lives, the one thing that had kept them connected to each other even when everything else appeared to be falling apart. In contrast, things were different this time. The choice that they had made was not only about themselves, it was also about their family and how they would navigate the future together or apart according to their decision. Katie was able to sense the anxiety that emanated from Bill just as she sat down on the comfortable sofa that was located in his office. She knew Bill better than anyone else. Below his rough facade, she knew that there was a guy who cared passionately for his family, even if he didn't always display it in the traditional ways. She knew this because she had known Bill for a long time. Katie started off by saying, "Bill," and she chose her words very carefully. "We've been through so much together. In addition, I am aware that this is not an easy task for you. For me, it is not an easy task either. But before we do that, we need to consider what is best for Will as much as for us." As Bill glanced at her, he clutched his jaw tightly. "Yes, in fact, Katie, I despise the fact that we are once more in this location. I despise the fact that we have to torment him." Katie extended her hand and took his hand, imparting a sense of stability to him. "In no way are we causing him harm, Bill. We are doing everything in our power to safeguard him, and provide him with the sort of stability that he so well deserves. As Bill heaved a sigh, his hold on her hand became increasingly firm. I just want to make sure that we're making the right choice. We are, Katie stated with a firm voice. Both of us have developed and evolved. It is imperative that we have faith that what we are doing is in everyone's best interest. Bill gave a hesitant nod, his determination becoming more firm. You are absolutely correct. Time has come. Later on that day, Bill and Katie found themselves at Katie's house, where Will was happily playing in the living room. He was blissfully ignorant of the seriousness of the talk that his parents were going to have with him. In direct contrast to the tension that was there between his parents, his laughing dominated the room. His parents were arguing with each other. Katie could feel her heart throbbing as she watched her kid, knowing that they were about to embark on a journey together. Both she and Bill had gone through the motions of practicing the speech in their heads, but now that the time had come, she felt a lump forming in her throat, like it was about to explode. When you have to tell a child something that will completely alter the course of his life, what is the best way to do so? Katie yelled out, "Will, sweetheart," to him in a tone that was soft yet authoritative. "Are you able to come over here for a moment? I need to talk to you, and so does your father." Will looked up, his eyes, which were so young and innocent, filled with intrigue. "Sure, Mom." With a broad grin written all over his face, he ran over to the spot where his parents were seated. "What's up?" Katie looked at Bill, who gave her a slight nod and then exchanged a glance with her. This was the end. After this point, there was no going back. "Will," Katie began, her voice firm but laced with emotion, "your dad and I need to talk to you about something important." "Will," Katie wanted to know what was going on. "This is something that we do not find easy to say, but we want to be completely honest with you since we love you so much." The grin that Will had been wearing began to disappear, and a look of concern appeared on his face. "Okay." In a manner that was unusual for him, Bill bent his head forward, and his voice became more kind. "Buddy, you know that your mom and I love you more than anything, right?" Will seemed to nod, his eyes darting back and forth between his parents. "Yeah, I know. In addition, and because we love you," Bill said, "we want to make sure that you are happy and that you always feel safe and loved. However, there are occasions when adults are required to make difficult choices, and we would like to have a conversation with you about one of those choices." The look of bewilderment that Katie saw in Will's eyes was so heartbreaking that it shattered her heart. After taking a few big breaths, she proceeded with, "We have come to the conclusion that it is in both of our best interests to live apart from one another. It has been decided that we will no longer be a pair working together." Katie was able to see the tears beginning to form in Will's eyes as they expanded in disbelief he was experiencing. However, "But why are you no longer the ones who adore each other?" When Katie was asked the question, her heart tightened, and she had a hard time keeping her feelings in control with her. It is true that we adore one another, Will. On the other hand, there are instances when loving someone has to do with understanding when to let go, when it is healthier for everyone involved to take a step back. The fact that we adore you is not diminished in any way. Will was greeted by Bill, who extended his hand and placed it on his shoulder. There is no change in the amount of love that we have for you or the amount of care that we have for each other. We are going to continue to be a family, but in a different way of doing things. The tears that were now streaming down Will's face caused him to gaze between his parents. "However, I do not want the two of you to live apart. What I want is for us to be together." While Katie was holding Will securely in her arms, she began to shed her own tears. Katie drew Will into her arms. "Yes, my darling, I am aware. I am aware that this is challenging, and it is acceptable to feel sad. However, I assure you that we will prevail over this collectively." When Bill reached out and laid his hand on Will's back, his own eyes began to blur. "We're still your mom and dad, and we'll always be here for you, no matter what." There was a whirlwind of feelings and changes that occurred in the days that followed. Both Bill and Katie found themselves in the position of having to navigate the challenging terrain of co-parenting in a manner that was both new and foreign to them. Will had taken the news very seriously. Suddenly, the house, which had been filled with the sounds of laughing and family dinners in the past, felt strangely quiet. The lack of the life that they had built together left a gap that neither of them knew how to attempt to fill. Katie discovered that she was lying awake in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, and pondering whether or not they had made the appropriate decision. In spite of the fact that their relationship had always been fraught with conflict, she misses Bill and the comfort that comes from having him around. However, she was also aware that this was the best course of action for both her and them. It was time for them to get off this roller coaster, to find serenity in their own lives, even if it meant being apart. They had been riding it for such a long time that it was time to quit. On the other hand, Bill immersed himself as much as possible in his work. It had always been his safe haven, the place where he could get lost in the transactions and talks, where he could forget about the insanity that was going on in his personal life. Spencer Publications had always been his personal sanctuary. However, even in that location, he was unable to shake the thoughts of Katie, of Will, and of the life that they had enjoyed together. The most of the time, he found himself staring out the window of his office, pondering whether or not he had made the correct decision, and whether or not there was still a part of him that could pull off a successful relationship with Katie. However, whenever such ideas attempted to make their way into his head, he would remind himself of the conversations they had shared and the choices they had made together. No longer was this about them. It was about Will, about providing him with what he should have.